Winter does something to people, something spectacularly unhinged. What you're about to hear actually ended up on real phone lines, city logs, and official reports. And every single one will make you question humanity just a little bit more. Let's get into it. 1. You would think people understand how weather works by now, but apparently not. A 911 dispatcher in Buffalo shared a log about a woman who called the emergency line demanding the city make the snow stop falling immediately. She wasn't stuck, she wasn't in medical danger, she just had a hair appointment and felt the mayor was personally responsible for ruining her blowout. She actually asked to speak to the manager of the plows to negotiate a ceasefire with the clouds so she could drive her convertible. 2. This next one is a level of delusion I aspire to achieve. A luxury ice hotel in Quebec received a scathing 1-star review from a guest who was furious that her room was, quote, freezing. She claimed the marketing was misleading because she didn't realize sleeping on a block of actual ice would require a thermal coat. She demanded a full refund and genuinely suggested they install central heating in the rooms, which, would literally melt the entire building into a puddle. 3. We all hate waking up early, but this homeowner in Minnesota took it to the Supreme Court of stupidity. He filed a formal noise complaint against the city's snowplows operating at 3 in the morning during a blizzard. His solution was brilliant. He proposed that the plows should only run between noon and 2 in the afternoon to avoid disturbing his sleep schedule. Apparently, he thinks the rest of the city should just drift their cars to work on black ice so he can get his beauty rest. 4. A community center in Utah received a complaint from a woman furious that the snow in the public park wasn't aesthetically aligned with her morning wellness routine. She said the flakes were falling at chaotic angles and demanded the city install fans to blow the snow in a more soothing, symmetrical pattern while she meditated. Apparently, Mother Nature needs to respect her energy flow. 5. Conspiracy theorists really shine in the winter. A public works department received a furious voicemail from a guy convinced that the city was using targeted weather control technology to dump snow exclusively on his driveway. He claimed that his neighbor across the street had significantly less snow, completely ignoring the fact that wind direction and sunlight exist. He threatened to sue the city for targeted harassment via precipitation unless they admitted to the plot and came to shovel his walkway personally. 6. Homeowner associations are notorious for being joy kills, but this takes the cake. A family received a violation notice because their children built a snowman that didn't comply with the neighborhood's aesthetic guidelines. The board claimed the snowman was too lopsided and was an eyesore that lowered property values. They gave the family 24 hours to either reconstruct the snowman to be symmetrical or remove it entirely before facing a $50 fine for unauthorized yard decor. 7. A man in Wisconsin called Parks and Rec to report a design flaw in a frozen pond. He claimed the ice was too reflective and messed up his phone's facial recognition while he tried to take a dramatic winter selfie. He demanded the city apply a matte finish to the lake so his camera could read his vibes properly. 8. A tourist board in New York City got a feedback card from a visitor who was deeply disappointed that the snow on the streets wasn't white like in the Christmas movies. They were appalled by the gray slush and demanded to know why the city doesn't bleach the snow to keep the festive atmosphere alive. They felt their holiday photos were ruined by the reality of urban sludge and suggested the city needs to try harder for the tourists who expect a winter wonderland, not dirty water. 9. During a declared snow emergency where street parking was illegal, a guy called the towing company not to retrieve his car, but to complain that the city plows had buried his Honda Civic. He admitted he saw the signs prohibiting parking, but thought they were just suggestions for other people. He demanded the city send a crew to dig his car out by hand immediately because he didn't own a shovel and didn't want to get his new leather boots wet in the drifts. 10. School superintendents have the hardest job in winter. One district office shared a voicemail from a mother screaming because school was canceled due to negative 30-degree wind chills. She wasn't worried about education. She was furious because she'd already planned a spa day and didn't want her 3 kids ruining her relaxation time at home. She argued that since the school has heating, the buses should just risk the dangerous black ice so she could get her mani-pedi in peace. 11. Have you ever seen a plow driver defy the laws of physics? Neither have we. A Boston resident called Public Works convinced the plow driver had a personal vendetta against him. His evidence was that the snow was pushed to the right, blocking his driveway. He refused to accept that plows are designed to angle that way. He demanded the city deploy special left-pushing plows into oncoming traffic just to save him 15 minutes of shoveling. 12. A woman in Michigan called the highway department with a revolutionary idea that proved she failed chemistry class. She was tired of road salt making her luxury SUV look dusty, so she filed a formal request to stop using it. Her brilliant alternative was to just spray hot water on the roads. She apparently forgot that water turns into a deadly skating rink the second it hits freezing pavement. But hey, at least her car would look shiny while she spun into a ditch. 13. One tourist left a scathing review for a Vermont ski resort that will make your brain hurt. They were furious that the outdoor temperature was, quote, aggressive. They claimed the resort website didn't adequately warn them that winter involves cold air. They actually asked for a full refund on their lift tickets because the mountain management refused to turn on the outdoor heaters that, spoiler alert, do not exist on top of a literal mountain. 14. Some people love their mailboxes a little too much. Police in Ohio had to respond to a call about a man sitting in a lawn chair at the end of his driveway during a blizzard. He was armed with a leaf blower and was aggressively aiming it at passing snowplows to deflect the slush away from his precious post. The officers had to gently explain that a handheld blower is not a match for a 10-ton truck moving 40 miles an hour. 15. A resident in a wealthy suburb contacted the city council to complain about the sun glare. They claimed the city failed to clean the snow fast enough, causing a blinding reflection off the white surface that made it hard to watch TV in their living room. Their solution was for the city to dye the snow a matte color, or perhaps authorize the fire department to hose down the neighborhood roofs with mud to reduce the shine. 16. During a declared state of emergency where even the police were told to stay off the roads, a man called 911 because his pizza delivery was canceled. He wasn't starving. He just really wanted pepperoni. He asked the dispatcher if a squad car could pick up his order on their way past the shop. Can you imagine the audacity? He argued that since he pays taxes, the police serve him, and right now, he needed to be served dinner. 17. The internet has ruined people's ability to think critically. A frantic caller in Georgia contacted the EPA because she was convinced the snow in her yard was fake. Plastic snow dropped by the government. Her proof was that when she held a lighter to a snowball, it turned black and didn't drip water immediately. She didn't understand sublimation or soot, but she was absolutely ready to sue the federal government for littering her lawn with toxic polymers. 18. A dispatcher in the UK had to keep a straight face when a woman called to report a grand larceny. Someone had stolen the snowman from her front yard. She wasn't joking. She wanted an officer to come out, take fingerprints, and review CCTV footage to find the icy culprit. The police had to explain that even if they found the thief, the evidence had likely already melted into the sewer system. 19. Air travel brings out the absolute worst in everyone. A passenger on a delayed flight started screaming at a pilot because of the de-icing process. He claimed the airline was just spraying water on the wings to drive up ticket prices and delay the flight on purpose. He stood up and demanded they take off immediately because he didn't believe in aerodynamics. Luckily, the only place he flew that day was back to the terminal with security. 20. A sanitation department received a furious email from a resident claiming their garbage wasn't picked up for 3 weeks. The manager went to investigate and found the trash can was buried under a 6-foot mountain of snow the homeowner had shoveled on top of it. The resident seriously expected the garbage men to act like archaeologists and excavate his trash bags from a frozen tomb every Tuesday morning. 21. A tenant in Denver called his landlord screaming that the entire building's roof was collapsing. When maintenance arrived, They found he had dragged his space heater onto the balcony to melt the snow faster, accidentally creating a geyser of steam that fogged his windows. He insisted the landlord compensate him for the trauma of indoor cloud formation. 22. A local news station was threatened with a lawsuit by a viewer who felt personally victimized by a forecast. The weatherman predicted 2 inches of snow, but the viewer got 4. This discrepancy apparently caused him severe emotional distress because he had to shovel for an extra 20 minutes. He demanded the station pay him an hourly wage for the difference between the predicted and actual labor required to clear his driveway. 23. A Florida man who moved north called the fire department because his swimming pool had frozen over. He wasn't worried about pipes bursting. He was worried his kids couldn't swim. He asked if the fire department could bring their trucks and pump hot water into the pool to melt it. He genuinely thought tax dollars should be used to create a heated jacuzzi in his backyard so his kids wouldn't be bored on a Saturday. 24. A luxury condo board in Chicago actually called the mayor's office to file a noise complaint against the wind. Yes, the wind. They claimed the gusts howling around their high-rise were exceeding the city's noise ordinance decibel levels and disturbing the residents' evening cocktails. They seriously asked if the city could install windbreaks or deflectors on the neighboring skyscrapers to redirect the air currents away from their specific building. Because apparently, even Mother Nature needs to follow HOA guidelines. 25. We have all seen people wearing the wrong shoes for winter, but this lady took it to court. She threatened to sue a grocery store because she slipped in the parking lot while wearing 6-inch stilettos during an ice storm. Her argument wasn't that the lot wasn't salted. She admitted it was. She argued that the store was negligent for not rolling out a heated rubber carpet from her car door directly to the entrance so she could maintain her fashion standards without consequences. 26. A frantic driver called 911 because he was stuck in a snowbank in a rural area. When the dispatcher asked what happened, he admitted the road was closed with a giant barricade, but his GPS told him to keep going. He was furious at the county, not for the snow, but for failing to contact Google to update the map in real time. He genuinely believed the county works department has a direct hotline to satellites and demanded they pay for his tow truck. 27. Animal control in Maine got a call from a woman claiming a moose was harassing her bird feeder by standing near it and staring. The moose wasn't touching anything. It was literally just existing. She demanded officers relocate the creepy forest cow to a different zip code because she felt watched in her own backyard. 28. The award for the pettiest neighbor goes to a man who called the police with a tape measure in his hand. He reported his neighbor for illegal dumping because the snowblower had thrown snow exactly 3 inches over the property line. He wasn't worried about damage. He was worried about the principle. He demanded an officer come to the scene to witness the violation and force the neighbor to move the pile of snow back across the invisible line with a teaspoon. 29. A Tesla owner called the highway department in a rage because the road salt was leaving white residue on his matte black paint job. He claimed the city was liable for damaging his aesthetic. His proposed solution: he suggested the city should switch to using premium pink Himalayan salt or a sugar beet mixture exclusively on the roads he travels, simply because it would look better on his car. I wish I was making this up, but the entitlement is 100% real. 30. A homeowner called his electric utility company screaming because his power bill was high. The reason? His solar panels were covered in snow and weren't generating electricity. He demanded the utility company send a crew with a ladder to his house to sweep off his roof panels. His logic was that since he pays a connection fee to the grid, the company is responsible for maintaining his personal equipment. He truly thought the linemen were his personal window washers. 31. You have to admire the confidence of this cyclist in Montreal. During a blizzard that shut down schools and airports, he filed a formal grievance that the bike lanes weren't cleared down to the pavement by 7 a.m. He was furious that the city prioritized clearing the routes for ambulances and fire trucks over his bicycle path. He wrote a 3-page letter arguing that his carbon-neutral commute was more important than emergency services and demanded a personal apology from the city planners. 32. A woman called the Parks Department to complain that the sledding hill was too fast. She had taken her toddler to the park, and apparently, gravity was working overtime. She was upset that her child got scared by the speed and demanded the city go out and texture the snow to increase friction. She essentially wanted them to ruin the sledding hill for everyone else, so her kid could slide down at a safe, snail-like pace of 1 mile per hour. 33. A man in Vermont dialed 911 to report a public safety emergency because a giant snowdrift outside his office window looked like it was thinking about tipping over. It wasn't moving at all. He wanted firefighters to come evaluate the drift's structural intentions before he re-entered the building after lunch. 34. A couple on their honeymoon in Iceland filed a complaint with their travel agency and the local tourism board because they didn't see the northern lights. They claimed the brochure promised a light show, and the overcast sky was a breach of contract. They demanded the city of Reykjavik turn off all the streetlights to boost the signal, or schedule a mandatory redo of the Aurora Borealis for the following night. Imagine thinking you can speak to the manager of the magnetosphere. 35. A suburban dad called the police on a snowplow driver for entrapment. The plow had gone by and left that inevitable ridge of heavy snow at the end of his driveway. He claimed this was an illegal act of detainment because he couldn't pull his sedan out without shoveling first. He wanted to press charges for false imprisonment against the Department of Transportation. The officer politely informed him that owning a shovel is part of the social contract of living in the Midwest. 36. A caller in Michigan accused the local zoo of emotional negligence after seeing penguins waddling in the snow. She was outraged they weren't wearing tiny protective boots, arguing their feet must be freezing. She demanded the zoo knit custom footwear for each bird, insisting she'd seen similar shoes on Etsy, and therefore it was entirely doable. 37. A man called the water department because his pipes froze. That sounds normal, right? Well, it turns out he had turned off his furnace to save money on gas while he went on a 2-week vacation in January. When he came back to a flooded basement, he blamed the city for sending him water that was too susceptible to freezing. He argued that the city should add antifreeze to the municipal water supply, which would, poison the entire population. 38. A driver sued a shopping mall after driving over a parking bumper that was covered in snow. He claimed that since he couldn't see the concrete block, it legally didn't exist. He wanted the mall to pay for his suspension repair and also demanded they install heated parking bumpers that would melt the snow on contact. Because obviously the mall's budget should be prioritized for people who drive by feel rather than by sight. 39. Do you struggle with the winter blues? So did a resident in Anchorage, Alaska, who called the mayor's office with a demand that would make a physicist cry. She was sick of it getting dark at 3 Wasanacht p.m. and formally requested that the city reschedule the sunset to a more convenient time, like 6 p.m. She didn't want daylight savings time. She wanted the local government to physically alter the rotation of the Earth because the darkness was messing up her circadian rhythm. 40. A high-end shopping district received a furious letter from a shopper who felt personally attacked by a pile of snow. The plows had stacked the snow in the corner of the parking lot, and over a few weeks, it had turned into a gray, dirty mountain of sludge. The shopper claimed the ugly ice hill was causing her visual distress and lowering the vibe of her shopping experience. She demanded the city power wash the snow pile to make it white again, or cover it with a designer tarp. 41. School bus drivers have the patience of saints, but this parent tested the limits. She called the transportation department to complain that her child had to wait outside in the cold for the bus. Her solution wasn't a warmer coat. It was for the bus driver to park the 40-foot vehicle inside her heated driveway gate and wait there. She argued that since she pays property taxes, the school district is responsible for ensuring her child never experiences a temperature below 70 degrees. 42. A woman in a drafty apartment building called 911 because she thought she was being electrocuted by ghosts. It turns out, it was just static electricity from the dry winter air and her wool socks. When the firefighters explained that low humidity causes static shocks, she refused to believe them. She demanded the fire department spray water all over her carpet and furniture to humidify the scene and stop the invisible electric demons from biting her. 43. We have heard of noise complaints, but have you ever heard of a silence complaint? A man living in a rural area called the sheriff because the heavy snowfall made everything too quiet. He claimed the lack of ambient noise was suspicious and causing him anxiety. He actually asked the dispatcher if they could send a patrol car to drive up and down his road with the sirens on, just to bring the noise levels back to something he considered normal. 44. A postal worker in Wisconsin became the subject of a formal investigation because of a homeowner's obsession with aesthetics. The resident complained that the mailman was ruining the pristine visual harmony of his driveway by walking on the fresh snow to deliver the mail. He wasn't mad about slip hazards. He was mad about footprints. He suggested the postal service should equip carriers with jetpacks, or perhaps throw the mail from the street like a newspaper boy in a 1950s movie. 45. A tourist visiting a ski town in Colorado called the police because he was stuck in his rental car. He wasn't in a ditch. He was just parked on a slight incline covered in ice. The problem? He refused to step out of the vehicle to push or put sand down because he was wearing limited edition sneakers. He treated the emergency line like a concierge service, demanding officers come and physically push his vehicle up the hill so he wouldn't crease his shoes. 46. A panicked woman called the city hotline because her dog sneezed after sniffing fresh snow. She was convinced the city had switched to a new chemical formula of winter and demanded to see the ingredient list for the snowfall. When told snow is frozen water, she replied, "Right, but what brand?" 47. Have you ever hated your job? Imagine being the manager of a grocery store who had to deal with this customer. A woman demanded a discount on her entire cart of groceries because the automatic doors let cold air in every time they opened. She claimed the draft gave her a spiritual chill and ruined her shopping feng shui. She seriously suggested the store should lock the doors and only open them for 5 minutes every hour, creating a hostage situation just to keep the lobby warm. 48. A resident in a gated community filed a grievance against his neighbor for air pollution. The neighbor was running a fireplace and the smoke smelled like burning wood. The complainant argued that wood smoke is a poverty smell and doesn't belong in their upscale neighborhood. He demanded the HOA force the neighbor to burn scented candles or perhaps install a filter that turns smoke into the scent of lavender and money. 49. A man called the highway patrol to report a reckless driver. The twist? The reckless driver was a snowplow moving at 20 miles per hour. The caller was upset because the plow was throwing snow onto the shoulder, and some of it hit his windshield. He claimed this was assault with a deadly weapon. He wanted the plow driver arrested for disturbing the peace and suggested the plows should stop moving whenever a civilian car is nearby. 50. You can't make this up. A woman called the city water department because the fountain in the town square had frozen over. She was upset because she threw a penny in to make a wish, and it just slid across the ice instead of sinking. She claimed this voided the magic of the wish. She demanded the city send a worker with a blowtorch to melt a hole in the ice so her coin could sink, and her wish for, presumably, a brain could come true. 51. A Tesla owner in Norway, where winter is basically the factory setting, complained that his car handles didn't pop out because they were frozen shut. Instead of buying de-icer or just hitting it with his fist like a normal person, he blamed the government. He argued that the country's climate policy was failing if it was cold enough to freeze luxury car parts. He wanted a tax credit for the emotional labor of having to manually pry his door open. 52. A guy called the police on a group of teenagers for vandalism. Their crime? They had shoveled his elderly neighbor's driveway for free. The caller was furious because the teenagers piled the snow on the strip of grass between the two houses, and a few chunks rolled onto his property. He wanted the kids charged with trespassing and illegal dumping. the officer had to explain that being a good Samaritan is not, in fact, a felony. 53. A woman called the airport customer service line to complain about the view. She was flying over the Midwest in February and was disappointed that everything below looked white and gray. She claimed the airline's website showed pictures of green fields and blue lakes, and this was false advertising. She demanded a partial refund because the scenery was broken, and she didn't get the Instagram photos she was promised. Because obviously, the airline controls the seasons. 54. A driver in Seattle called the city to file a claim for his car accident. He had run a red light and T-boned another vehicle. His excuse? The traffic light lenses were covered in snow, so he couldn't see the red. That part might be plausible, but his demand wasn't. He insisted the city was negligent for not employing people to stand on ladders at every intersection with hair dryers to keep the lights melted. He genuinely believed that was a scalable municipal strategy. 55. A man in New Jersey called 911 to report a hostile snow formation on his lawn. Officers arrived to find a simple snowdrift. He claimed the wind had sculpted it into a shape that felt threatening and demanded police flatten it so it would stop staring at him through the window during dinner. 56. A resident in a mountain town called the sheriff's office to complain that the road closure signs were violating his constitutional rights. The pass was closed due to a massive avalanche risk. He argued that his four-wheel drive truck was built different, and the government had no right to restrict his freedom of movement just because of some falling rocks. He signed a waiver, drove around the barricade, and, surprise, had to be rescued by a helicopter 2 hours later. 57. Have you ever been so entitled you tried to outsource your pet ownership? A dog owner called the Parks Department demanding they plow a specific designated poop patch on the greenway. She claimed her Chihuahua refused to walk in the snow because it touched his belly, and therefore the city was responsible for his constipation. She suggested the city maintenance crew should shovel a 10 by 10 foot square of grass every morning at 6 a.m., specifically for her dog's bathroom habits. 58. A man called his internet provider during a blizzard to demand a credit on his bill. His internet was working fine, but he was upset that the technician canceled his appointment to install a new router due to unsafe road conditions. The customer argued that neither snow nor rain applies to the mail, so it should apply to the cable guy too. He told the supervisor that if the technician truly cared about customer service, he would have walked the 5 miles in the snowshoes. 59. A woman called the non-emergency police line to report a suspicious person following her. It turned out to be the salt truck driver. She was driving 5 miles an hour in front of him, and he couldn't pass. When the dispatcher explained that the truck was trying to help her by salting the road, she disagreed. She claimed the sound of the salt hitting her wheel wells was aggressive and constituted harassment. She wanted the plow driver to turn off the spreader whenever he was behind her luxury sedan. 60. A tourist in Aspen went to the front desk of his hotel to complain about the altitude. He felt short of breath and dizzy while skiing. Instead of accepting that he was at 10,000 feet, he blamed the hotel's ventilation system. He demanded they pump extra oxygen into the outdoor ski runs, or at least into the lobby. When the concierge explained that they couldn't control the atmosphere, he threatened to leave a 1-star review for lack of air. 61. A homeowner called the city to report that the snowplow had knocked over his mailbox. Standard stuff, right? Except the mailbox was actually a reinforced brick fortress he had built illegally, right on the curb edge specifically to destroy snowplows. He was furious that the plow won the battle and cracked his masonry. He admitted to the public works director that he built it as a trap and then tried to sue the city for damaging his defensive perimeter. 62. Can we talk about the guy who called the police on the sun? A driver was blinded by the glare of the sun reflecting off the ice on the highway and crashed into a guardrail. He sued the state for not installing polarized giant screens along the interstate to block the winter sun. He argued that the Department of Transportation should have known the sun angle is lower in winter and failed to protect drivers from excessive natural brightness. 63. A frustrated mother called the school district to demand they stop declaring snow days. She worked from home and claimed that having her children in the house was affecting her productivity. She wasn't worried about their safety on the bus. She just wanted them out of her hair. She suggested that if the buses couldn't run, the teachers should be required to walk to the students' houses and conduct private tutoring sessions in their living rooms so she could take her Zoom calls in peace. 64. A resident called the fire department to express deep concern that a fire hydrant outside his house had accumulated a hat-shaped mound of snow. He insisted this meant the hydrant was trying to signal distress. He wanted firefighters to brush it off gently so the hydrant wouldn't feel forgotten, and requested periodic wellness checks throughout the winter. 65. A homeowner called police to file a complaint after the city plow left a ridge of snow at the end of his driveway. Not unusual, except he demanded officers open a formal investigation into meteorological sabotage. He claimed the snow had been strategically angled to target him specifically and wanted the plow driver questioned about his motives. 66. A woman called the airport to complain that her flight was delayed for de-icing. She claimed she didn't believe in chemicals and didn't want toxins on the plane she was riding in. She demanded the pilot go out and scrape the wings manually with a credit card or a broom. She held up the entire plane for 40 minutes, arguing that organic ice removal was a safer option than the industry-standard glycol that keeps everyone from crashing. 67. A guy in Buffalo called the mayor's office with a billion-dollar idea. He was tired of shoveling and proposed that the city install heated coils under every single street and sidewalk in the entire metropolitan area. When told this would cost more than the GDP of a small country, he got angry. He accused the city of being stuck in the past and said they were choosing to let people suffer when the technology to turn the city into a giant toaster clearly exists. 68. A tenant called his landlord screaming that his apartment was freezing. The maintenance guy rushed over, expecting a broken boiler. Instead, he found the tenant sitting on the couch in shorts and a tank top, with the window wide open because he was smoking. The tenant argued that he pays for heat, so the radiator should be powerful enough to combat the sub-zero air coming through the open window. He genuinely thought the heating system was magic. 69. And finally, the undisputed champion of delusional complaints. A resident in a snowy Minnesota town started a petition and called the city council repeatedly, demanding that the city build a giant glass dome over the entire town. Like in the Simpsons movie. He wasn't joking. He had drawn up blueprints on a napkin. He argued that the savings on snow removal would pay for the multi-trillion-dollar structure in about 300 years. He accused the council of lacking vision and dooming the residents to a life of open-air misery. And that wraps it up. A blizzard of complaints nobody should have made, yet somehow did. Now, I want a brutally honest take from you. What's the dumbest winter complaint you've ever heard, or secretly wanted to make yourself? Be brave. Drop it in the comments. If this gave you even one "no way this is real" moment, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video will challenge your faith in humanity even harder.